Thank you. To begin this evening, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land in which we gathered here this evening, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, as well as to other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are here with us this evening. Moving to the agenda, item 1 on the agenda is membership, and it is as listed with the exception of Councillor Lawrence and Councillor Amir, who are both on approved leaves of absence. Item 2 are apologies. So there's apologies from Councillor Lawrence and Councillor Amir. Item 3, disclosures of conflicts of interest. Councillors, are there any disclosures? No disclosures, thank you. Item 4, confirmation of the minutes of council meetings held on the 16th of October and the special meeting on the 13th of November. It's moved by Councillor Messina and seconded by Councillor McCarthy. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Item 5 is question and submission time. So I'll move first to the questions and submissions that we received online and via email first. The first question is from Bo Lee from Preston. The question is, I have been raising the need for a zebra crossing at the southeast corner of Bell Street and St George's Road outside the Darebin Art and Entertainment Centre for over 2 years now. The latest response from Vic Roads is particularly disappointing. It basically said that Vic Roads has concerns that a zebra crossing will pose a safety issue for cars. As the council may be aware, this crossing is used by numerous commuters accessing Bell Station as well as kids from nearby schools. I have witnessed on numerous occasions where drivers ignored pedestrians and cars sped across the slip lane, forcing pedestrians to seek safety. My question to council is this. Will the council write to the Minister for Roads asking him to confirm Vic Roads' assessment that a zebra crossing will pose a safety issue for cars and that safety issues for pedestrians are secondary to those for cars? I look forward to your actions and response from the Minister. So council officers have already raised safety concerns at the lack of a safe pedestrian crossing facility at this location on numerous occasions, and to date Vic Roads have installed a pedestrian warning sign, however have not implemented any meaningful actions to improve this situation. Officers will continue to advocate for safety improvements to Vic Roads and to local MPs. And after the issue being raised by Councillor Amir recently directly to the CEO will also be writing a letter to the Minister raising this issue once again. Question 2 is from Brian Fairman from Preston. Are you here in the audience? Yes? Is that you? No? No? Okay, I'll read out Mr Fairman's question. In relation to the current upgrade of the facilities at Florence Adams Reserve, question 1, could council consider a dual rotating basketball and netball facility replacing the current netball only facility? And 2, could an external power point be included at the barbecue facility? This would provide some advantages for users of the barbecue and could be included in the current refurbishment. So the response from council is that upgrade works at Florence Adams Reserve are currently underway and are due to be completed by the end of this month, November 2017. As part of the 2016-2017 capital budget, a sum of $50,000 was allocated for the upgrade to this reserve to implement a barbecue, a drinking fountain and associated minor landscape upgrades such as picnic tables and new garden beds and trees. A draft design was issued for this this upgrade for community feedback back in February. One of the suggestions received during the draft design consultation was the addition of a basketball half-court in place of the netball hoops currently in the reserve. This option was considered to be out of scope of the upgrade, which was focusing on providing the barbecue facility and the drinking fountain. When considering the additional facilities, such as a basketball half-court, proximity to local residences to minimise noise issues and access to similar facilities in the area would be considered. So that's in relation to the basketball court. In relation to the external power point, at the barbecue facility, it's not a standard inclusion that council includes in our public parks. Inclusion of an external power point would raise issues related to use, including the intended purpose for an external power point and potential risks associated with use for a variety of electrical appliances. Question 3 is from Serena O'Mealy, who is not here, so I'll read out her question. Can you please provide an update on the negotiations with La Trobe University for the purchase of the Strathallan open space? So Council, as you will be aware, Council supports the retention of the much needed open space provided by the Strathallan Golf Course, and discussions have been continuing with La Trobe University to achieve this objective. Myself, the CEO and Mr Vito met recently about a month ago with La Trobe in response to their offer to negotiate the sale of that land, and work is continuing on that negotiation. And I understand that there is another meeting scheduled in December with the Vice-Chancellor for myself and the CEO to attend. The second question is, there are two parts. In relation to the valuation of the Strathallan open space, can Council clarify whether the Valuer General took into consideration the environmental values of the site, the fact that it is prone to flooding, and the fact that the golf course is in the process of securing a long-term lease of the clubhouses and surrounds, which would make the property landlocked and thus difficult to develop? The second part is, will Darebin Council commence the process of developing an environmental overlay for Strathallan open space? So the Valuer General's valuation report was commissioned by La Trobe University, and therefore Council is unable to comment on what was considered by the Valuer General and what was in the brief given to the Valuer General. It has also been classified as given to us confidentially, so we are unable to share any of that information at this point. And I'd suggest speaking with La Trobe University about further questions to the valuation. The environmental significance overlay is a planning tool available to ensure that development is compatible with the identified environmental values. However, this type of overlay is typically suited to privately owned land and not public zone land. So further to this, the Strathallan Golf Course is already protected in the same way through the public use zone, Clause 52.17, Native Vegetation, and the Flora and Fauna Guarantee Act 1988. A planning permission would therefore be required from Council prior to any development under the current controls, and the decision guidelines would make it difficult for Council to approve the removal of significant vegetation from that site. The next question is from Anne Laver from Northcote, who is not here, so I'll read her question. The first question. Okay, so Anne has provided a little bit of background before she goes into the question, so I'll just quickly read that first. She notes from the results of the Darebin Community Survey that 3 of the issues we have been urging the Council to address remain a significant issue for the community, and they are parking, traffic management, and building, planning, housing and development. Also noted is that although the category making decisions in the best interests of the community is solid at 6.5, it has declined since the previous council, as has the category communicating its programs and services, down from 6.97 to 6.76. And also that the Darebin Community Survey only surveyed 1,000 residents and the advocacy programs totaled 129, yet there were only 89 responses. So Ms Laver's question is, will the Council now take further action to address the issues facing the community and accept that there is dissatisfaction with some of the decisions being made on our behalf, and that action needs to be taken to address the 3 significant issues raised in the survey? So Council has also recognised the need to improve the way it informs and engages with our community about Council services, projects and works, including advocacy being undertaken, and is committed to developing a community engagement strategy by the 30th of June 2018. The focus of this strategy will be being out in the community, connecting, engaging and informing the entire community. Through the development of this new strategy, new communication methods and tools will be put into place that Council hopes will provide the community with more up-to-date and detailed understanding of the work Council is doing around the 3 top issues raised in the Community Satisfaction Survey. The second question is, given the low number of residents surveyed, and lack of knowledge in the community of the advocacy programs, will the Council widen their communications, such as by increasing the community news mail out and making it available in different languages, and perhaps establishing opt-in emails or text messages from the Council for all responses, queries and updates? So Council already uses a wide range of communication channels to get news and information out into the community, including the Darebin Community News, which is distributed 6 times per year to every household, social media, news media, advertising, brochures and flyers, letterbox drops, websites, several opt-in e-newsletters and face-to-face opportunities. So as mentioned in my previous response, Council is committed to developing the new community engagement strategy that will standardise and improve the way we communicate with our community. The suggestions within your question will be taken into consideration when developing that strategy. And then there are two further statements by Mr Lever that in relation to the appointment of an external auditor, which is on the agenda at 8.9. I thank the Council for appointing a new external member of the Audit Committee and the advances the Council have so far made in addressing the outstanding audit items. And the second statement is that Ms Lever would like to thank Council for the app SnapSend Solve, but request that the community be advised of its existence. Okay, we've gotten through all of the questions that we've received online. Are there any further questions from the gallery or statements? Yes.
First question. Congratulations to yourself and the council appointments.
Thank you.
And my question is a follow-up question. Back on the parking and storage reservoir. It's been due and you've followed up, and I've had a letter of reply and a phone call, but actually no action. Caravan would still park across the major street, well across it, if it was on the road, and car park the other side, and could not get through. I did raise the point that this is contagious, and that's what's happening in other towns that park on the major street too. The promise was to go and review it. Maybe they will during the day when everyone's away. It is night time, it's noon. So I'm asking for again look at that issue. Why I'm trying to get on top of it is there's an awful lot of development happening there, very well developed. This major street parking is built, it's going to be going down.
Thank you for your question. I will refer the question to be followed up tomorrow or offline by Ms Stevens, who is responsible for the enforcement area of Council, so has been already working on this issue. So she'll follow up with you again tomorrow. And I'm sorry to hear that this has been an ongoing issue for you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? No? Thank you. We'll move now to item 6, petitions. Are there any petitions? No? Councillor Rennie.
Can I propose that we take an item ad order and move item number 10 to the front of the agenda, because I believe there are members in the audience who are here for that item.
Okay, so the procedural motion is to now consider the notices of motion item now. Is there a seconder? So that's seconded by Councillor McCarthy. All those in favour? That motion's carried. Moving now to item 10, notices of motion, 10.1, campaign by United Voice. And we have someone in the audience who'd like to make a submission to this item. So it was Mariana, yes? Thank you. Now we'll go to the motion. So
Yes, I wonder if it's possible to put it up on the screen.
I think we're having technical problems with
Okay.
it. Oh, is it working? Okay. It's our screen's not working. Seconded by Councillor McCarthy. Councillor Rennie.
I'm delighted to speak in favour of this motion tonight to support the campaign by United Voice and Crossbow Voice for the Respect is the Law campaign. Violence against women in our community causes extraordinary harm. In fact, for women aged between 15 and 45, it creates a greater burden of disease than any other health condition that affects women in that age group. So I'm just appalled to learn that in a survey that was undertaken, 89% of young women in the hospitality industry had experienced sexual harassment and 19% had been sexually assaulted. And only 36% felt that their employers took the matter seriously. That's simply not good enough. That is sending a message to young women that they should not put up with this, that it's somehow okay, that it comes with the job. And I think we all know that that is simply not okay. That every person who attends work, who shows up in the morning, deserves to be in a safe workplace. And sexual harassment makes a workplace unsafe. So I think as a council we can show real leadership in this area, and I think we can start by doing the things that are outlined in this motion, but I hope that we'll actually be able to look beyond this and think of some additional ways in which we might be able to have an influence. So this motion notes that venues are being asked to do a number of things. The first is that they are to demonstrate zero tolerance for harassing behaviour, and that means they must remove patrons immediately if anybody demonstrates this behaviour. And I think that's absolutely critical, that no one's business is worth putting up with harassing behaviour of staff. And I think that that's a really important message that we all individually also need to send when we go out into our community as individuals. When we go to a cafe, we see someone experience harassment, we need to say to that business, we don't want to be in your business if you think that it's okay to let your staff be treated like that. But at an organisational level, I think council can send that message very powerfully. The campaign asks venues to demonstrate zero tolerance by displaying a Respect is the Law window sticker and posters, to establish a contact person for complaints and questions, show managers and staff the Respect is the Law training video, and distribute Respect is the Law fact sheets. It would be great if every business, every hospitality business in Darebin signed up to this campaign. I'm not saying that's going to solve the problem overnight, but I think it's a really important first step. I hope that if this survey is done again in 12 months or 2 years' time, that data, that appalling data about the number of young women particularly who are experiencing harassment has gone down. And I think that Darebin should use all of its purchasing power and all of its leadership power to send that message very clearly to hospitality businesses in our community.
Thank you, Councillor Rennie. Councillor McCarthy.
Thank you, Councillor Rennie. Thank you also to the submitter as well for that information. And I commend Councillor Rennie for putting this on our agenda this evening. I took some time recently with the Me Too campaign through social media to read some of the personal testimonies and comments. And what struck me in that particular, not so much a campaign but a movement of people sharing their experiences, and obviously predominantly women, but also men experiencing and sharing their own observations as well, was the prevalence of workplace-based sexual harassment, and the fact that people go to work with an expectation in some cases that is going to occur, and feeling the I suppose the support to say that is not okay and that is not normal, and in fact it's illegal. Unfortunately, as Councillor Rennie has outlined, this is prevalent throughout a whole range of sections of hospitality and areas, unfortunately, of our local business community. It's something which, when I say prevalent, we know it occurs because the survey says so. We don't know where it occurs, but what we can do through this sort of emotion and this sort of support for those businesses that are prepared to stand up and say no, is actually demonstrate who are the employers of choice, which are the businesses which take the zero tolerance approach that's been outlined, and also send a signal to patrons as well. These are the venues, these are the hospitality locations that you want to support, because they're actually kind of tackling this problem head on through the direct action that has been prescribed in the motion. So I think that we're at a stage at the moment where, as a civil society organisation, we have a responsibility to not only get our own house in order, but also to try and help those organisations in our community, such as local businesses, also lead by example.
Thank you, Councillor McCarthy. Councillor Newton.
Thank you, Melissa. So following on from Councillor McCarthy, I think that we've seen the Me Too campaign and scandals from Hollywood recently show how far we have to go towards women's equality. I think this campaign is incredibly important for women and men in our community. I think pretty much all women experience harassment in some form. And I just had a conversation this morning with a friend who works at Colina Bar in Thornbury. She said how it's female owned and has mainly female staff, and that women feel safe coming there by themselves, and that there's no tolerance for sexism and harassment. This should be the rule, not the exception, and this campaign will help that become the norm, and I'm very happy to support this campaign. Thank you for bringing it to our attention.
Thank you. Are there any further speakers? Councillor Greco.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd like to say a few words in relation to this. Just this morning I heard a report on the radio with the I think it was the National Secretary that was dealing with some of the people that work in the hospitality industry, basically saying that a lot of people in the hospitality industry, or many of them, earn sometimes even around $10 an hour and are really exploited. And why I say that, because that provides the context. A lot of people that are employed in the hospitality industry do receive low wages and are exploited. The working conditions are very casualised. It's very precarious work, and that creates the setting for this type of harassment, for sexual harassment in the workplace. I think that the motion, and I welcome the motion by Councillor Rennie, I think we need to show some solidarity with these particular workers, because when you think about the hospitality industry, for many of us, it's a place of leisure, it's a place of enjoyment. For others, it becomes a traumatic place for them. So we need to actually expose that, and I'm really thankful for the work that's been done by the union in doing that. Also, the other thing to note is that, particularly in Darebin, I know many people that, or some people that work in the hospitality industry that are either students that have recently arrived from overseas, or many new arrivals. It's usually one of their first jobs. And when it's one of their first jobs, they don't know all the conditions. Sometimes they're not even aware that a union can represent them. And that's where, again, it's a ground for that type of exploitation. So I commend the motion, and as Councillor McCarthy said, this fits with the ethos of the council, and we have policies around this, not only policies in relation to our workers, but those policies,
10 seconds.
As an act of solidarity, should extend to the residents in our community and beyond.
Thank you, Councillor Greco. Are there any other speakers? If not, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? The motion's carried. So that's all the notices of motion. So we'll move now back to item 7, urgent business. So there is 2 items of urgent business. Which one?
Move that they be accepted onto the agenda.
We have to do them one by one. So we'll move first to the Reforming the Victorian Planning Division City of Darebin submission. So Councillor Rennie moved to accept them onto the agenda, and seconded by Councillor McCarthy. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Is there a mover for that motion? Moved by Councillor Rennie. Seconded by Councillor Messina. Councillor Rennie, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes. I'd like to start by commending the officers within the relevant department at Darebin City Council, because in fairly short timelines they've pulled together what I think is a very good submission in relation to the government's discussion paper. So the discussion paper is reforming the Victorian planning provisions, and I should say at the outset, I think that it is commendable that the government is looking to reform the Victorian planning provisions, because what's happened over the years is that planning schemes have had one add-on after another, so that they've become extraordinarily complex as a result of additions onto additions, which means that at times it can be hard to know exactly which part of the planning scheme is relevant, and there could be conflicting elements. So at the outset, I think it is a positive thing that the government's looking to do this, but our submission highlights some of the weaknesses perhaps in the government's approach and some things that would be good for there to be mindfulness of as the government goes forward. So, just to begin, I think we need to be, and our report has very accurately highlighted, the risk that there could be a loss of local objectives and strategies in any move to kind of recreate a planning scheme at the statewide level, and that the discussion paper hasn't been mindful enough perhaps of the tensions that exist in the community over the perception that the planning system is failing to protect livability of suburbs and doesn't easily enable councils to respond to issues such as sustainability and housing affordability. So I think our submission makes these points very well, whilst also identifying a number of quite specific points that are brought up through the discussion paper process. Once again, I do commend our officers for putting this report together, and I commend it all to you because I think it's actually quite a good read in terms of thinking about the future of the planning scheme and where it might go to. It's not without some reservation that I think we look to the government and the process they're undertaking, because the first stages of this process are to improve and reform, and there's a third stage which is to transform. And one of the difficulties is that they haven't yet funded that third stage of transforming, and so they're doing some initial work, and it's difficult for councils, I think, to know whether we should hold up our processes and our reviews of planning schemes, which we obviously don't want to do, but the idea that the government might at some point in time get funded to do a massive transforming piece of work is concerning when we're actually investing significant time and resources in reviewing our planning scheme. We're not the only council to be in that position. So I think that this is an opportunity in our submission actually
10 seconds.
does that, achieves that, to provide some guidance to the government, things they should look at and how to conduct this process in a really respectful way to local government.
Thank you, Councillor Rennie. Councillor Messina?
Nothing further. I think Councillor Rennie said it all.
Thanks. Are there any further speakers? Councillor Greco.
I'll just make a brief comment. Look, I've had a chance to have a quick look at the submission by our officers, and I commend them for their work in terms of putting this together. Look, in general, I agree with the overall sentiment that's expressed in the document. Personally, I would like things to for us to put an even stronger position, but I understand that we have to try and put a position that that the organisation is comfortable in. And why I say that I think that in relation to planning issues where we have to take a strong voice is that, and we'll be talking about this later tonight, when we look at the community survey in relation to how the community sees the council, one of the things that we've been broadly marked down on is planning issues. Now we know, and people that play in the space of planning, that a lot of the decisions that are made by council are hamstrung by state legislation. So, but for the community out there, they may not necessarily see that because they see council, VCAT, the minister, department, and planning, all one big blob against the little guy that's out there. So in opportunities like this, where we get an opportunity to actually make a submission, I think it's good that we try to represent the voice of the community so that we can hopefully have some impact back on the minister in terms of when they frame the planning rules and planning regulations, that it gives a little bit more power to, or a little bit more say to our residents. So notwithstanding that, I do have some reservations with some of the issues that are being presented here, but overall I commend the submission that is being made.
Thank you, Councillor Greco. Are there any further speakers? If not, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That motion's carried. Moving on to the second item of business, which is in relation to the Northcote by-election. We move a motion to accept that onto the agenda. So that's moved by Councillor Greco and seconded by Councillor Messina. All those in favour? That's carried. And we'll just pop the motion up on the screen if we can. Okay.
So
Councillor Greco, would you like to move that
I can speak
motion?
to it, yep.
Would you like to move the motion?
Yes,
Yes.
I'll move the motion.
And,
Just before there's a move, can I just propose a word needs to be included, which is the first Aboriginal woman?
oh yes, I actually picked that up too. So are we happy to include that? Otherwise it's factually incorrect. Great. So moved by Councillor Greco and seconded by Councillor Messina. So Councillor Greco, would you like to speak to the
Just
motion?
very briefly, as we know, there was an election held on the weekend, and what we saw is an exceptional win by Lydia Thorpe in relation. It actually surprised all the pundits in terms of the extent of the extent of the victory. She's the first Aboriginal woman to represent Indigenous people in the Parliament of Victoria, which is quite a significant and historic significance. And I think why it's important for us to offer congratulations to Lydia Thorpe is that, as we know, Darebin does a lot of work in and around the space that's got to do with Indigenous people. Recently, we moved a motion around January 26th, which received national attention. But not only that, but on a more grassroots level, we have a whole number of organisations, Aboriginal organisations, that operate in and out of Darebin. We have one of the largest populations of Aboriginal and Indigenous people that live in Darebin compared to other metropolitan areas. And also, historically, Darebin it's been an area where we know, for example, just on the outskirts of Darebin, where the so-called first treaty between the Wurundjeri and John Batman was signed near the Mary Creek. So there's a lot of history. And again, I think we've made another big piece of history by the people of Northcote, which are the residents of Darebin, predominantly, voting in Lydia Thorpe. But I also like to say too that not only we've got an Aboriginal person in Parliament to represent Northcote and also to be of service to the city of Darebin. There are many other issues that we know that are associated with our city, and I'm pretty sure that somebody like Lydia Thorpe can offer a really fresh approach, a fresh look at the various concerns we have been raising over the various years, and bring some new thinking and some creative solutions to the way that we are trying to deal with issues that have been quite persistent in our community. So I really look forward to, as a councillor, to working with the new member for Northcote, and I'm sure that the council will gain a lot out of that. And finally, I would like to say that it may be at a subsequent time, once the Lydia Thorpe settles into the Parliament, it may be a good opportunity to actually invite her to the council, because we had a whole lot of claims that we wanted to discuss. So once all the congratulations is over, we're going to get down to some hard work and start to deliver on those issues that affect a wide cross-section of the community.
Thank you, Councillor Greco. Councillor Messina.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Greco. Yes, Saturday was an historical win for the Greens Party, but let's not forget why the by-election took place. Fiona Richardson, the Minister for Women and Minister for the Prevention of Family Violence, thank you for your years of tirelessly advocating. Congratulations to Lydia Thorpe on the victorious win. Congratulations to the Greens political party. I had the pleasure of spending a few hours with Lydia's mother and Lydia herself on Saturday. I was impressed, and I believe Lydia has the best interests of the people, and I look forward to working with her. I want to take this opportunity and acknowledge the years and years of foundation laid by our fellow councillor, Trent McCarthy, tirelessly advocating for the Greens political party and local issues. Well done. I think it's important to acknowledge your work and your dedication. And to the Greens and Labor volunteers trying to recruit my son, touche for your efforts, but hands off, he's mine.
Thank you, Councillor Messina. Councillor Newton.
Thank you, Minister. I'd also like to acknowledge the work of Fiona Richardson, the former member for Northcote. She was an amazing advocate for family violence and for gender equality, and I think we must honour her legacy. I would say that one of my greatest joys on Darebin City Council so far has been being part of the Darebin Aboriginal Advisory Committee and passing the resolution to support the Change the Date campaign. Lydia Thorpe spoke passionately about the Change the Date issue the night we voted on it at a council meeting a few months ago. It's of historic significance to elect the first Aboriginal woman to Parliament, and I'm so glad it happened right here in Darebin. Her win is significant for representation, reconciliation and standing up for both the Aboriginal and our wider community. I hope that Lydia's amazing win and the work that we're doing on Darebin Council helps make us a community that sees the world's oldest living culture as part of our wider culture, like the way Maori culture is part of wider New Zealand's culture, something we understand, embrace and are a part of. I look forward to working with Lydia on the issues that matter to our residents. Lydia is a keen netballer and I look forward to working with her on sporting infrastructure for women and girls, increasing and improving public housing at Walker Street and throughout Darebin, ensuring the best outcomes level crossing removals in Preston and Reservoir, reducing gambling harm and pushing the Victorian Government to do as Council has done and declare a climate emergency and commit to a whole of government response to restore a safe climate. Northcote has made history and it's just incredible to be part of this historic achievement. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any further speakers? Councillor McCarthy.
I'd like to also pass on my significant congratulations to Lydia Thorpe for her election on Saturday. It was a profound change and a profound result for the southern half of the city of Darebin to not only have a change in political representation, but it's also to have someone elected who is, I think, set to play a significant role in the Victorian Parliament and also in Australian politics. And of course, for anyone that's turned on the radio today or yesterday, you can't help but hear everyone across the political spectrum asking the question, what does this mean? And what does this mean for an area like Darebin, and in this case the seat of Northcote, to not only take such a significant change and of course installing someone who represents not only the world's oldest living culture in terms of her activism and her interests, but also represents the future in terms of policies that she campaigned on, which and signed up to every one of the council's preferred advocacy positions that we put forward, which we were very pleased to see, as did a number of other candidates, and we should acknowledge that too, that we did attract broad support from the 12 candidates for the council's issues. I think we're in a very interesting time in politics in Australia and certainly in Victoria. They talk about it as volatile, but I think it's also a time when people are voting on the basis of values and also on the basis of progressive ideas. Whatever they come to mean in the future is something which we hope that this council and our community will be part of. But I think we are in a profound period at the moment, and it's a really important period, and we need to take stock of the fact that the political change that's just occurred in this area, certainly just south of Bell Street there, will be on the radar of the state and of the country for some time, and I think we'd be remiss in not marking it with this significance. So once again, huge congratulations to Lydia and all the candidates who stood. They also all put in a terrific performance and in a very short campaign, obviously as we heard from Councillor Messina, in very unfortunate circumstances. And I'd also pass on my condolences again to the family of Fiona Richardson, who I think obviously recognise the significance of this moment as well.
Thank you, Councillor McCarthy. Councillor Rennie.
I'd also like to note that in many ways Saturday was the by-election that nobody would have wanted to have because it was brought on by the death of Fiona Richardson. And I think whatever side of the political spectrum people find themselves on, we need to acknowledge that Fiona Richardson was a very fine local member in terms of the commitment that she brought to this electorate and her long-standing connections to the area and the leadership that she showed within the Victorian Government, particularly in the area of preventing violence against women. I'm delighted that Lydia has been elected because I think that Lydia is actually in a superb position to carry on that leadership, particularly because she's had the courage to speak about her own experiences of family violence, and I think she'll be a very strong voice there. But I'd also like to acknowledge and congratulate all of the candidates who ran in Saturday's election, because we all know as people who have campaigned for local government that it's really hard work and you invest an enormous amount in it. And for everybody who isn't successful, there's a lot of disappointment at the end of the day, and those candidates, you know, most of them did work very hard, and Claire Burns particularly worked very hard and was a very committed candidate also. So the thing about elections is, particularly if it's not local government, if it's an election such as this, only one person can win. Lydia was that person. She campaigned superbly, and I think she will be an extraordinary representative for the Northcote electorate. And I look forward to the relationship that this council will build with Lydia as one of our local representatives. I look forward particularly to seeing the way in which she can carry on some of our advocacy objectives and work with us to achieve those and be a strong voice for us in Parliament. But beyond that, I think that it's important that as a council, Libby can also be a bridge to us working with all of the state government and other levels of government.
10
And I think
seconds.
that we want to be and become and build a council where we have a very constructive relationship with all our representatives. So huge congratulations to Lydia, and let's look forward to the next steps.
Thank you, Councillor Rennie. Any further speakers? If not, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That motion is carried. That is all of the items of urgent business. Next is item 8, consideration of reports. 8.1, financial report, 3 months ended 30th September 2017. Moved by Councillor Greco. And seconded by Councillor Rennie. Councillor Greco.
Just very briefly, this is the quarterly reports that we receive as a council in relation to the financial dealings of our organisation. It's the first quarter. It's up to the 30th of September, so it's the first report that we've seen. It's a bit early days, really. A lot of the data there is, just covers the first quarter. But generally, one could say that we are on track in relation to meeting our financial targets and responsibilities. And as councillors can see, it's a very comprehensive report. It covers both our cash position, our capital works spending, and our operating expenses. The only point that I would make out of what I've seen in the report is in relation to our capital works program. We are lagging a little bit behind, but that's expected in the first quarter because that's when a lot of the contracts are entered into, or some of them are deferred and things like that. But why I pay particular attention to that, this year in the budget we've got about $50 million that we'll be spending on capital works. Our experience in the past has been that we've had a lot of carryover. So it's a figure, it's an item, which is a big item that we really need to keep a close eye on and track right throughout the year, so that we get as close to that $50 million spending as we possibly can, because infrastructure spending, capital work spending makes a big difference in our community. And so I'm pretty sure that by tracking that, that we'll get close to what we budgeted at the outset. So I commend the report, and I look forward to the next quarter's report.
Thank you, Councillor Rennie.
I'd also like to commend the report to everybody. As you will have seen, we are operating at this stage a little bit with a slight surplus. That is explained within the report, and part of that is that we are, as Councillor Greco said, a little bit behind with the capital expenditure. I think that often is the case at this time of year, because the first stage in doing those capital works is, of course, to go out to tender to find people who are going to do many of the works, and that takes some time before you can actually spend the money. I think it's also worth noting that a report such as this doesn't just talk about what's gone in and what's gone out in terms of finances, but also notes things like the cash and investment balance, and makes sure that balances such as that are sufficient to meet the requirements and to cover any future obligations. And that's an important part of the financial stewardship of an organisation, is not just to look at what goes in and what goes out, but making sure that all of our obligations are covered now and into the future. So I would commend the report to you, because I think it shows that we're in a very sound financial position, and it has been reviewed vigorously, and we look forward to seeing how it develops in a few months' time.
Thank you. Are there any further speakers? Can I put that to the vote? All those in favour? That motion's carried. Item 8.2, 2016-2017 annual summary results for the Darebin Community Survey.
I'm happy to move that with a
Yep, we'll just get
slight
the change up on the screen. So that's moved by Councillor Greco, and you've seen the amended motion, seconded by Councillor Newton. We'll just wait till it comes up on the screen. Okay. Oh. The officers haven't received the amended motion, so I'll just send it to them. But do you want to speak to the motion? Before we do that, has all councillors seen the changed? Hang on.
May I ask what time it was sent, please?
2:30. 2:30 this
early,
afternoon.
early this afternoon.
So it was in response to an email about the Aboriginal Advisory Committee.
That's why.
That's why you can find it in some.
Okay.
You just wait till it comes up on the. There we go. Okay, Councillor Greco.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Mayor. Look, first of all, I'll just speak to the general idea behind this report, and then just highlight some of the points that I've included there as additional points to the officer's recommendation. As we know, this is a report that we receive on a periodic basis, and it's a survey that's done in relation to the council's many activities and services that run out of the council. In the executive summary, you could see there basically how we're faring as a council, and on average, I think overall the council is faring fairly well. Relative to other councils, we are doing quite well. We're not exceptional. We need to say that we're not exceptional, but we're doing quite well. Also, relative to some of our neighbouring councils, again, we sit in the average mark. As we know, there's a lot of demands that are placed on council's services and activities. There's high expectation of the community in relation to what we do. But what I wanted to focus on is some of the areas where I think we could do some more work and where we can actually, if you like, lift our game. Why I say that is that we've got to think of this not only in relation to what other councils are doing or what the average across Melbourne is doing, but we've got to look at it in terms of our very ambitious council plan. We have an extremely ambitious council plan. If we run along the path that we're running, which is business as usual, we're not going to achieve the objectives in our council plan. We have to really do more. And I think what this report shows, has shown this over many years, is that traffic management, building planning and housing development are some of the key issues that our community really wants us to address. And I feel that they're very difficult issues, they're very complex issues. There's no magic wand in relation to these issues, but obviously what it requires, I don't think business as usual will actually cut through in delivering what our community expects of us, and also what we expect of ourselves in terms of our very ambitious council plan. So, and if you have a look at some of the survey results, some of them are quite concerning, because in relation to one, we've actually dropped down to below 5, which is once you start dropping below 5, that's a very poor result, and we really need to be cognizant of that. And that's in relation to planning and housing development. We talked a bit about it earlier on, about our submission to the state government, and again, many of the things associated with plan are a bit beyond our control, but hopefully we need to do some work, and that's why I put that motion up there, where if we can get a report back around traffic and parking management, and also around planning issues, on how we can actually further our strategy, both in the short, medium and long term, to properly address this beyond the business as usual.
Thank you. Councillor Newton.
Thank you, Melissa. So, as Councillor Greco said, the Darwin Community Survey shows that we are doing well overall, but we have some improvements to make. No council would be surprised to note that the three most common issues with traffic management, building planning, housing and development, and parking. I am too concerned about the decline in satisfaction with protection of local heritage and respecting local neighbourhood character. Planning is one of the biggest challenges we have on council, and I really want us to continue to work on protecting and respecting our neighbourhood character, and both fight hard to protect neighbourhood character and increase the quality of new developments. As Councillor Greco said earlier, we're so often bound by state planning legislation, but we must still do what we can to protect what is so precious about our city. I also acknowledge we need to work harder on communicating our programs and services, lobbying and making representations on key issues. And I actually feel we're doing a lot in this issue, but on the area of communicate what we're doing better, and particularly community consultation engagement and making decisions in the interest of the community. So to achieve where we want to be, I'm pleased that we're developing a new community engagement strategy by mid-next year to ensure council members are out in the community, connecting, engaging and informing on what we offer and increasing community participation in decision making. I'm glad this survey helps us focus and hone in on the areas we need to work on, and I'm committed to working towards a better result for next year.
Thank you. Any further speakers? Councillor Rennie.
Thank you both to Councillor Greco and Councillor Newton for their perspectives. I would like to take this opportunity to thank all of the staff who have actually worked very hard in many of these areas of council to achieve very good results. And I particularly note the exceptional results in customer service, and that's often people's very first interface with council. And it's not always easy to give great customer service when people call up and they are upset about the parking and the development and other things. So I think that, notwithstanding some areas where there's been declines, there's a lot of positive things to highlight in here, and it is a reflection of the exceptional staff within the organisation. And I think there's a lot in here that we can be very proud of as a community, noting particularly that perceptions of safety in our community are actually very high. And I think it's important that we highlight and recognise those positives as well. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rennie. Any further speakers? Shall I put that to the vote? All those in favour? Motion carried. Item 8.3, Penders Park Master Plan Community Project Control Group. It's moved by Councillor McCarthy.
I'll move that, and in point 2, insert my name as Councillor McCarthy as the chairperson of the Community Project Control Group, with Councillor Rennie as the proxy chair for that. Also, I just would ask, and I'd seek our CEO's advice on this, just in relation to point 1, the terms of reference that are provided are quite prescriptive and can only be amended by council. And I just wanted to check whether an additional set of words to point 1 after the word Appendix A could be included, which would be with minor amendments being able to be made by the CEO where required. If those words could be added, just because there are a couple of minor things that may need to be addressed going forward.
So that's moved by Councillor McCarthy and seconded by Councillor Rennie.
Thank you.
With those proposed wording changes. Yep. Thanks.
Thank you.
Councillor McCarthy.
So just for councillors' attention, so the proposed rewording of point 1 was just to add the words with minor amendments being able to be made by the CEO where required. That was just to add to point 1. Thank you, Councillor Rennie. I'm really pleased to move this, and I'm really pleased to see what's been proposed. There is a community of interest around Penders Park, which is both emerging and growing rapidly, and that is partly to do with the fact that there is obviously a lot of children in the area, including children that not only live close to the park but also now live in the area closer to Preston Junction, where there is limited open space opportunities, and Penders Park is in fact the closest piece of open space for a lot of those families. There's also been a really strong desire expressed now over 2 years by locals who've formed a Friends of Penders Park group, who've lobbied very strongly to council, going back over 12 months now, for council to look at installing an all-abilities play space at the park to accommodate a range of young people and a range of children in the area of varying abilities and also of varying ages as well. So to really see Penders Park as a place which is inclusive of children of all abilities and all ages as well. And the opportunity in this is of course the thing that has been pursued at a range of other parks, often much larger places, such as the park next to the Royal Children's Hospital, which enables play spaces where parents and kids can play together, so co-play type environments, but also intergenerational play opportunities. And that's important for a lot of the families in that area where there is limited open space and often children growing up without backyards. Suddenly Penders Park becomes the backyard for many local kids. And we know that's the case with the prevalence of apartment living in the area as well. What's proposed is something that council officially hasn't done before, which is effectively hand over the design process to an appointed panel of community members, in this case described as a project control group. And this is unique because whilst community members are often consulted in the design and delivery of a park redevelopment project or a master planning project, they don't necessarily sit at the driving table and lead the project in the way that's been prescribed here. And hence we've got a set of terms of reference which are quite prescriptive, but do provide avenues for involvement and certainly an opportunity for a group of residents to both develop and apply a set of skills that often sit in the hands of consultants or council officers. So this is exciting because it does take us into that community design process, which the community itself is often telling us they'd like to be involved in, and we've set up some parameters for that to occur. We know from the huge survey that was conducted last year by local residents that there is a lot of interest in what Pendas Park can be, not just in terms of the vegetation and the facilities, but also as a meeting place and a gathering place for community. So I think we're going to be surprised by how many expressions of interest we receive, but I think we're going to be overjoyed with what this group comes up with as well. And the process kicks off, if approved tonight, later this week, which is very exciting.
Thank you, Councillor McCarthy. Councillor Rennie.
I'm also, like Councillor McCarthy, very excited by this process. I think we have an opportunity here to try out something new in terms of how we plan for play spaces in the future. And if this process is successful, then it may well provide a blueprint for how we go about master planning for other parks in the area. And I firmly believe that where the community gets involved in these processes, they will get better outcomes and we will get spaces that are really great for everyone who lives in that community. This is an area of Thornbury that is rapidly changing. There has been quite a lot of development in the area, and that development does mean that a lot of extra people are actually looking to use parks in new ways and are acquiring those parks for different purposes, often as their backyard, often for their gathering with friends or family on a Sunday afternoon. They may be spending a lot more time with children there because they don't have backyards. These are the sort of realities that we're facing with urban consolidation. And I think that this process will be most successful if we're actually able to include and engage with all of those people as well as those traditional stakeholders who might live directly around the park. So I look forward to hearing about a really diverse group of people being involved in this process. I'd like to particularly commend the work of Councillor McCarthy, who I know has had a lot of contact with the community around Pendas Park over a number of years. And particularly also commend the efforts of community members who have spoken up about the needs in their community to see this park improved and upgraded. So, as I said, I think this is an exciting opportunity and I look forward to what we might actually learn from it as well, because I think as much as the park will be improved and upgraded with the community participation, we as a council will actually learn a great deal from that process of community partnership and consultation.
Thank you. Are there further speakers? Not put that to the vote. All those in favour? Motion is carried. Item 8.4, proposed discontinuance of drainage reserve adjoining 20 Pellew Street and rear 7 to 13 Taylor Avenue Reservoir. Moved by Councillor Greco and seconded by Councillor Newton. Councillor Greco?
Yes, very briefly, Mayor, this is one of those straightforward discontinuance proposals that comes to council on a periodic basis. What we have here is we've already commenced the process of the statutory process. It commenced back in May, and in relation to the drainage and sewage reserve associated with this particular property. What we did was we went out and advertised as is required by the statutory process, and in that process there were no submissions received in relation to council discontinuing the drainage and sewage reserve, and as a result of that we're recommending in this report that we complete the statutory procedure and that the drainage and sewage reserve be sold as part of by private treaty as recommended in our council policy. Again, I'd like to emphasise that there's been no objections received by residents, and so we're at the end of the process, and if we endorse this here tonight, then there will be a process of negotiations and treaty arrangements in relation to receiving some compensation for that particular piece of land.
Thank you. Councillor Newton?
Thank you, Melissa. Just very straightforward. It's been used by 20 Pelly Street for many years, even though it's still on council title. 20 Pelly Street is happy to consider purchasing it, and I think we should just get it done. Thanks.
Thanks. Any further speakers? I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Motion's carried. Item 8.5, proposed road discontinuance, rear of 1 and 3 McCartan Street and adjoining 25 Southern Hay Street Reservoir. Moved by Councillor Williams, seconded by Councillor Newton. Councillor Williams.
Yep, this is another discontinuance bit of land. It's located at the right of way and reserve of number 1 and number 3 of McKeaton Street and adjoining to Southern Hay Street. It appears that it has been enclosed to the property boundary of 25 Southern Hay for many years. So we're now doing the commencing of the statutory process under the section 206 clause 6 for the Schedule 10 to the Local Government Act. So the discontinuance of the road would be great, which will allow that the public could actually purchase the land. So we'll give notice under the sections 207 and 82A to the appropriate newspapers, the Gazette and Council's website for those adjoining properties to purchase that land.
Thank you. Councillor Newton.
Thank you, Officer. Just very briefly, this one's slightly less straightforward because the road has been used by 25 Southern Hay for a number of years, but there's also an inquiry from 3 to 5 McCartan Street that might want to purchase it. So that's why we're going through the statutory process, and we should be able to hopefully find a resolution after that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further speakers? I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Motion's carried. Item 8.6 is the adoption of the John Cain Master Plan. CEO?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'd like to withdraw that item, please.
Okay, thank you. So we'll withdraw that item for consideration for this evening. Item 8.7, endorsement of Darebin Creek Management Plan. Moved by Councillor Rennie, seconded by Councillor McCarthy. Councillor Rennie.
The Darebin Creek is one of our greatest assets. It provides a wildlife and a nature corridor that goes the full length of Darebin from south to north and along with the Merri Creek. I think it's very symbolic of where we are and sort of community we live in, which is, of course, between the two creeks. But importantly, the Darebin Creek isn't just Darebin's Creek. It actually goes down into Yarra and north up into Willoughby and into the urban growth areas. And that's why it's very important to have a Darebin Creek management plan. It's not just about what council does in the space, but that actually identifies that the Darebin Creek Management Committee is well placed to actually look after this natural asset because they can take into account what's happening with the length of the creek. So it's understandable, of course, that we can't completely influence the health and well-being of that creek by the actions we take in Darebin, and having a management committee that goes beyond that and a plan that looks at the creek as a whole is fundamentally important. And that plan extends to considering things like adjoining land uses that exist along the creek. And obviously that's very important because we want to minimise any pollution or rubbish or anything that lands in our creek. We want to look very carefully about sensitive land uses along the creek. So I think that all of that is captured in the Darebin Creek Management Plan, and I'll commend it to all of you because I think the future of our creeks is actually inherently tied in the future health and wellbeing of the whole community.
Thank you. Councillor McCarthy.
Thank you, Mayor, and I would note your role as the President of the Executive Committee, and we do have a strong leadership role with the Darebin Creek Management Committee here in Darebin, which is great to see, and is actually a relatively new thing. So we take it very seriously, and I would second Councillor Rennie's comments about the fact that this plan is in response to obviously a range of factors that have changed and shifted since the original version of the plan was adopted in 2007, so 10 years on, and we just have to look at the change in land use at the northern end of the Darebin Creek to see what the risks are, which we've seen them already play out on a number of occasions with pollution incidents due to industrial activity, but also, which has been a more prevalent issue on the Merri Creek side, with the issue of development encroaching both in terms of the waterway, but also having downstream effects. And you just need to look at the actual plan itself and look at the range of regional policies that have been developed and state policies that have been developed that actually had a significant impact on what the Darebin Creek is. not just as a biodiversity corridor, and there are literally a few hundred different species that can be found of frogs, fish and bird life along the Darebin Creek, many of which are either threatened or endangered due to land use activities, but also the emphasis on amenity, which is now a key feature, which wasn't a feature of the Darebin Creek in the past. And that's because people are increasingly, and they've done this at the southern end, and they are now doing this as we head north, turning to face the creek and turning to engage with the creek, rather than building sheer walls against the creek or having industrial sites. People are saying this is a natural asset which must be protected. So
10 seconds.
Having an updated plan is essential if we are going to make the case to government for the investment that this Darebin Creek really needs.
Thank you. Any further speakers? No, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Motion's carried. Item 8.8, appointment of the Aboriginal community members to the Darebin Aboriginal Advisory Committee. Moved by Councillor Newton and seconded by Councillor Gregory. Councillor Newton.
Thank you, Minister. So I'm very pleased to endorse the appointment of Terry Mason and Charles Panica as the new members of our Darebin Aboriginal Advisory Committee. This is such a special committee, a true partnership between our Aboriginal community and council leadership, and I'm so excited about what Darebin will achieve with this committee over the coming year. Terry Mason is a Reservoir local and community activist living in Latrobe. He regularly attends council meetings and was an integral part of ensuring the old Woodland school site was saved and purchased by council. Terry has recently been involved with working to protect the Strathallan open space. He's a true local independent community activist and campaigner. Most recently I saw Terry speak at the NTU National Conference. He's a strong unionist and he spoke out strongly against the Community Development Program, which is basically slave labour for Aboriginal people. So I'm very, very happy to welcome Terry to the committee. Charles Packner, Tasmanian Aboriginal man who's been a large part of the Victorian Aboriginal community for many years. He's a writer, artist and works with 3KMD Aboriginal Radio, and I welcome him to the committee as well.
Thank you. Councillor Gregory.
Just very briefly, I think Councillor Newton's covered it very much. But I'll just make the point that these two people that we're getting on the Aboriginal Advisory Committee are highly skilled people with enormous networks, and I think they'll make a great contribution to not only to the Aboriginal Advisory Committee, but also to the work that we do as a council in that space. So there's a lot to learn there, and I really look forward to working with these two additions to the committee.
Thank you, Councillor Greco. Any further speakers? I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Motion's carried. Item 8.9, appointment of the External Audit Committee member. Moved by Councillor Rennie. Would you like to put a name in there?
Yes, I believe we may have added the name Marco Bini.
We're going to put that up, is it? So that's moved by Councillor Rennie. And a seconder? And seconded by Councillor Messina. Councillor Rennie.
Thank you. I'd like to recommend Marco Bini as the preferred candidate for the third position of external auditor. We have been without an external auditor now for a number of months because our first appointment wasn't able to accept the position. Marco Bini has been through a rigorous process which has included referee checking and meeting with the Mayor and myself, and we're very confident he'll bring some new skills and perspectives to the Audit Committee, and that in particular he has an extensive background in legal work and in auditing, and I think that combination is going to be really important. Because the Audit Committee is not just about the financials, it's about understanding risk with quite a broad perspective, and I think that in order to understand and really investigate and think about in a thoughtful way the kinds of risks that Council needs to do, we want a very diverse Audit Committee with people with diverse skills, and Marco Bini is an exceptional candidate who will bring some new and different perspectives and a very strong career and professional role.
Thank you. Councillor Messina just pointed out that it should be Dr. Marco Bini, so if you could make that amendment, if you're happy, Councillor Rennie.
Yes.
Yeah. Councillor Messina.
Nothing further, just the addition of the doctor.
Thank you. Are there any further speakers? I'll put that to vote. All those in favour? Motion carried. 8.10, instruments of delegation, special committees.
I'm moving that.
Moved by Councillor McCarthy. And a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Rennie. Councillor McCarthy.
Thank you. So as councillors would recall, we of course held our annual meeting last week to appoint the Mayor and Deputy Mayor for the year. We also need to go through the process, as is the case, to appoint other members and of course to undertake the instrument of delegation for our special committees. And as councillors would be aware, each of our special committees has responsibilities as per the Local Government Act and other acts to undertake decision-making and consideration of matters on behalf of council. Just for councillors' reference, of course, we are referring here in this case to the Planning Committee, the Hearing of Submissions Committee, Bundoora Homestead Board of Management, and of course these instruments of delegation do not vary from previous instruments in any significant way, but what they do is mean that a range of decisions that otherwise would end up in this chamber can be made in other places, and that's an important legal function that we must, a legal decision that we must make in this chamber in order for that to occur and for those decisions to be valid. So I don't have anything else to add other than that, and it's good to keep the ball rolling.
Thank you. Councillor Rennie?
Nothing to add, thank you.
Okay, I might put that to the vote. All those in favour? Motion's carried. Item 9, consideration of responses to petitions, notices of motion and general business. Drainage investigation for Mayors Street, Perinion Road and St Vigians Road Reservoir. Moved by Councillor Greco, seconded by Councillor Newton. Councillor Greco.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, very briefly, this is an item, a notice of motion that was brought to Council by Councillor Tim Lawrence, who's obviously not here. And all I'd like to say in relation to this item, there's been a comprehensive report here that's been prepared by our officers. So what the original motion was requesting was that we look into some of the flooding issues in those particular areas that are mentioned here in the report. And this all comes from the back in it was earlier 2017, I think, that right at the beginning of the year, where there was that enormous storm event that created a massive downpour of rain, and we had many complaints. In this particular area here, there's over 15 complaints that were received by council, and as a result of that, it spurred on a whole discussion about whether our drainage system is suitable or adequate for these particular events that occur, not every day, but are occurring much more regularly. So what's been done in this report, so that we're absolutely clear, is that the officers have actually had a look at these particular areas. You could break them out into 3 different sections. They've individually examined those particular areas and offering some suggestions of what sort of future work would be required to actually address some of the drainage concerns in those areas. And there's obviously a lot of cost associated with these particular items. For example, in relation to the overflow between St Vigians Road and Miranda Road and Green Road, we're looking at over $220,000. And also in relation to the others, they're about $100,000 a piece. So we're looking at $400,000 to $420,000 in terms of addressing these issues. And what has been suggested in the report, which I think really makes sense, is that it's not sort of thing that you can just do straight away. There's a lot of planning associated with this. So as a result of that, it's been referred to our budget deliberations so that we can have a thorough discussion in light of all the other things that need to be done and to see how we can further some of this work. I would also point out that some of this work, there are in some areas where there are substandard drainage issues. And also in other areas where some of the work had been done but had not been fully completed. So we would need to carefully have a look at that, and in light of the money that it cost us, and also in light of the risk factors that are associated with it, and seeing how we could progress that. I know that the residents in that particular area are very concerned and worried about if another event like this happens. But it's a real event for them in terms of the flooding that occurs, the damage that occurs to their properties, and we have a certain responsibility to make sure that we can cover those particular incidents. So I commend the report, and I look forward to further discussions down the line.
Thank you, Councillor Gregory. Councillor Newton.
Thank you, Melissa. Just briefly, I also wanted to acknowledge that Councillor Tim Lawrence brought this issue to our attention, and I know that he had quite a bit to do with this issue when the storm happened last year, so just want to acknowledge that. I'm really glad that we've gotten this comprehensive report so we can take some action. I know that it says that particularly the damage around Pyranyon Road is considered to be of higher priority and worthy of implementation in the shortest possible timeframe. So I think it's great that this is on the table for the budget next year, and I think it's really important that we get this happening. I know that we see a lot of flooding in Reservoir and Bundoora as well, and it's a really big challenge for both existing developments and new developments as well. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any further speakers? I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Motion's carried. Now we've dealt with item 10, so item 11 is reports of standing committees. 11.1 Audit Committee. Moved by Councillor Rennie. Seconded by Councillor Williams. Councillor Rennie.
Yes, I'd just like to commend the report by the Audit Committee to everyone and note that the Audit Committee does far more than just look at the financial reports for the organisation. It also looks at and considers things like investment policy, risk management and internal audits. And internal audits are the process of actually reviewing each of Council's areas of operation and making sure that it is being undertaken effectively and efficiently and with good governance principles in mind. So the role of the Audit Committee is quite broad, and the meetings at times go into quite high levels of detail about some levels of operations, and the Audit Committee also considers what are the sorts of audits that might be considered into the future. So I think it's good to understand the depth and breadth of the work that the Audit Committee does, and also note that at the last Audit Committee meeting, Mr Terry Richards was elected as the chairperson for the next period, and Ms Lisa Tripodi was elected the deputy, and we also set 4 meeting dates for 2018.
Thank you. Councillor Williams.
Nothing further to add. Councillor Rennie has definitely summed that up beautifully.
Thank you. Are there any further speakers? I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Item 12 is records of assemblies of councillors. 12.1 is assemblies of councillors held, moved by Councillor Williams and seconded by Councillor Messina. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Item 13 is reports by Mayor and councillors. So there is a copy of that in front of us, and that there's a small amendment to the proposed amendment to the version that we have, so that the last dot point in Councillor Williams's reports reads, attended to matters of development, community concerns relating to a recent council meeting, laneway access, dump rubbish, graffiti, safety of footpaths due to incident and other constituent matters. So that's moved by Councillor Williams and seconded by Councillor Messina. All those in favour? Motion carried. Item 14 is consideration of reports considered confidential. There's 2 items there that are both been designated confidential, both due to contractual matters.
I just move that we move into camera.
Thank you, Councillor Rennie, and seconded by Councillor Messina. All those in favour? All those in favour? Motion is carried. The council is now moving to consider matters considered confidential, so we'll be closing the chamber to the public. Thank you for those who have attended this evening.